unsuspecting farm workers to sign a document that, in this document, you are signing to confirm that you have received your dividend. As usual, they've been receiving their dividend annually because they are shareholders in the scheme of 20,000. But in actual fact, the document says we are buying your shares for 20,000. Here is a business plan that the farmer commit in 5 years. I will relinquish my equity or my share holding from 55 to less than 50, so that the farm workers can now have the majority stake in the farm.
So also, that is in a contract. It's in black and white.
It's there in black and white. My rough calculation to date, the Department of Justice and the Department of Agriculture combined, they have used more than 10 million taxpayers' money fighting to pay an invoice of just less than 4 million and refusing to restore the dignity of the farm workers who today are languishing in poverty when government has made it possible for them to be shareholders in one of the most successful grapevine farms in the land.
Welcome to another episode. This is The People's Eye. My name is Sizwe Samayende. I am your host as usual. Today we are talking about a very important matter, land reform. Today, as we sit here this December, it's about 30 years since the Restitution of Land Rights Act was passed after shortly after the democratic government led by the ANC took over in 1994. So, while we're here, we're going to discuss a very sad matter down in the Northern Cape. A land reform matter that really went very bad for the farm workers. I'm with Mpho Sebashe. Mr. Mpho Sebashe was a consultant down there in the Northern Cape, assisting the farm workers in an equity scheme that was started by the Northern Cape government in 2016, but a lot of things went wrong. Since this Restitution of Land Rights Act was passed, many good things have happened in the country. People have got land. Landless people, were able to reclaim their land. Land has been redistributed to blacks, but there have been instances where land has been given to blacks and then it has been taken away from them. Unfortunately, we are not celebrating the passing of the act today, but we're dealing up with a case where black people, black farm workers, were given land somehow in the Northern Cape, and then they lost it. This is one of the biggest land scandals. Mr. Sebashe, welcome to the People's Eye podcast.
Thank you, Mr. Sizwe Yende, and indeed, it's quite a tragedy. I've listened to your opening remarks, taking note that it's indeed 30 years later since the Restitution Act was promulgated into law. And indeed, there are good things that are happening. But I just want to shine a spotlight on what has happened in the Northern Cape.
Yeah.
Specifically in the Department of Agriculture.
Yes. No, let's just start with the background. How did it come about? What were they starting? The project that they started. It was a good project with good intentions. It was to empower farm workers to be shareholders on the farming enterprises where they were employed. Just take us through that background first, and then we're going to go through to the problem that started there. Yeah.
I think on paper, the equity scheme is a brilliant empowerment program, because what it sought to achieve was to bring the previously marginalized group. As you know, that in 1913, African people in particular lost their right to land. And they could not even use land as a capital.
Yes.
The government in the Northern Cape then decided we are going to roll out. In fact, it's a national government program of agriculture, where they have identified farming activities to offer or to provide a platform where farm workers can participate meaningfully economically, where they can also invest in labor and earn some sort of a dividends. They become partners in the running activities of the farm. They are no longer just ordinary farm workers who are receiving measly wages at the end of the day. They now have an equity. And that equity came also with a form of a spatial land that was allocated where housing were built, or houses were built
for the farm workers. Okay.
Which means one would think that there was also a partnership with the Department of Housing, where this low-cost housing that we call RDP are erected on the farm.
Okay.
And I've seen them with my own eyes.
Okay, but where were the farm workers living before those RDP houses were built? Because I'm imagining that if the standard of uplifting them included building them RDP houses, you wonder, where were they living before? What kind of shacks were they living in before?
Absolutely. When you look at those, it's a pity I've not been there before. The project could kickstart. I only went there because I was appointed as an investigator officially by the Master of the High Court on the 5th of September in 2017.
Yes.
But in 2016, I had an opportunity to visit some of those farms when we attended what we call a consultative session that was organized by the Department of Agriculture's MEC, former MEC Norman Shushu. Yeah. We've managed to visit those farms in and around Appington, also in Aghrabis and in Kakamas.
Yeah. How many farms we're talking about and farm workers?
Well, just a case in point on Badiramoro, because the farms that participated on the equity scheme, when we did our investigation, we uncovered that there were about 22 farms.
22 farms.
And in Badiramoro alone, there were 46 farm workers who participated in the equity schemes. And that 46 farm workers managed to acquire per person per share 800,000 per person per share.
So for all the 22 farms, for all I know, each of them could have had 40, 30 farm workers.
Yes, in some instances you find that there are about 15. Some you find that there is 46, like in the Badiramoro case. We've never actually came across where there are more than 100.
Yeah, but
because they were only selecting the permanently
employed
farm workers, because during the harvesting of the grapes, because this is the grape vines belt in the Northern Cape. They have a season where in the year from August
Yes.
until the end of December or just early January,
Yeah.
that they will attract seasonal workers.
Oh, yes.
In and around the Northern Cape area. They will flock those areas of Appington, Agravis, and Kakamas in search of those opportunities. But I would suspect throughout the year they will have less than, maybe in Badirammo they will have less than 46, or they will have 46 permanent farm workers who participated in the scheme and who benefited in the equity scheme.
Exactly. And each farm worker, the government allocated 800,000 for each farm worker.
That's correct.
Which, a rough calculation in my head, the government could have spent 200 million or even over.
Even more.
Even more.
Yes, even more if you take into consideration that in Badirammogo alone it's 46.
Yes.
But in the number of the farms that participated in the schemes, 22 farmers or 22 farms benefited from that equity scheme share allocation.
Yeah, because for those 45 workers in Badirammogo Trust, maybe the figure comes to about 36 million.
That's correct.
For the 45 farm workers there. So you can imagine a lot of money that was spent to enable these farm workers to be shareholders, to be partners, to be co-owners of the properties where they have worked, probably for generations.
And what is also must be highlighted is the fact that apart from the 36 million on the Badirammogo case, there was also money that was acquired through loans.
Or to augment
because the 36 million will go directly to the farmer to acquire the 45% stake in his farm for the farm workers. Then they needed capital, operational capital. That's where you had some agencies that were involved. Public-private partnership that made available some additional funding for building of storage, the state-of-the-art storage facilities, pack house facilities, and also bringing on board other departments, like I've already mentioned, the Department of Housing, to roll out those houses that were built on those farms.
Big project. It seems to me from the beginning, I remember it was all over the news, this Agri-PE equity scheme project, in the Northern Cape. Well, obviously, it was a good project with good intentions. What went wrong? When did things start to go wrong now for the farm workers? Because now I'm sure government has paid, they've become shareholders, they are being shown profits, financial statements, and all those kinds of things. They are being called to meetings to participate and guide the direction of their businesses, which they're now owning 45%. Well, what went wrong?
The master calls it a lack of oversight.
By who?
By the Department of Agriculture. And the Department of Agriculture as well concede in their findings that there was no proper processes put in place to manage and to oversee that investment, if indeed, because what we must also take into consideration, Sizwe, is that the farm workers, they wrote in a business proposal to be considered, to be part of the equity scheme. In some of the proposal, the business plans that I have seen when I was doing my investigation, the farmer has committed that after a certain period of time, I will relinquish my majority shareholding
To the
to the farm workers.
Yeah.
And for that to happen, government employees or government officials were supposed to have done their checks and balances.
Yeah.
Because here is a business plan that the farmer commit in 5 years. I will relinquish my equity or my share holding from 55 to less than 50, so that the farm workers can now have the majority stake in the farm.
So also, that is in a contract. It's in black and white.
It's there in black and white. In the business plan that was considered for this farmer to be allowed to participate in that scheme and to be given that 36 million.
You've been involved in land reform for quite a while. Isn't it a problem that cuts across all these land reform projects that failed, where the main issue is that government didn't monitor to ensure that things are going okay after people have been given back the land?
Unfortunately, that's the case, Sizwe, and it's very sad that we seems to have all these beautiful policies on paper. We seems to have all these nice programs that government seeks to achieve. But when you look in terms of the fit for purpose staff that they have, their staff complement, I think on the management side, that is where a whole lot of these schemes go wrong, because there are no oversights, there are no monitoring, there are no processes.
Yeah, but in some instances, the government official is forever there, but now is having ulterior motives. For instance, they will be the ones brewing disagreements or dividing the beneficiaries themselves for their own ends, removing the other beneficiaries, keeping others. You know, those who are questioning things in all these land reform projects get removed somehow, so that those who are docile, those who do not understand, cannot read and write, remain. And then the ownership of the land now gets back to previous owners, or even to benefit proxies of the government officials. This is what I've observed in land reform projects. And I've been reporting on land reform since the past 15, 20 years. The pattern is just the same.
The modus operandi, it cut across, even in the case of these equity schemes in the Northern Cape, is exactly the same way. The observation is exactly the same. People who seems to be aligned to the farmer, to the white farmer, are protected.
Yeah.
And you wonder, even with this glaring evidence given to government officials, even political appointees like your MEC and like your premier, it seems as if nothing, seems to be, done.
Yeah, we'll come to that. I want to know, at what stage do you come in, and what had happened? What had been discovered that there's something going wrong? And then at what stage do you come in, and what was the reason for you to come in?
When I first attended the consultative session, I went in as a consultant representing the farm workers of Badira Mmogo.
Okay.
And I participated on that basis.
Okay, consulted to ensure that the contracts are fine.
Yes, Badira Mmogo sought my services so that I can be able to assist them, because they said to me, we do not understand what is happening.
Yes.
But here is what we can tell you. We were allocated shares. Here is our share certificates.
Yeah.
We were given this amount. They gave me all sorts of proof, evidence.
Okay.
Some in recordings, voice recording.
Yes.
from the media publication when these shares were being allocated, when the then MEC, Tina Jo Peterson, was the MEC of Agriculture in the Northern Cape. We've got media, a publication that reported on this outstanding and this remarkable breakthrough, as it were.
Yeah.
And the beneficiaries of Vadiramogo who had done, they sought my services.
Okay.
And they invited me to the Northern Cape using a farmer by the name of Gert Olivier.
Okay.
Then I attended the session in Appington. And my observation was, indeed, the government considered that something wrong happened and it needed to be corrected. But we raised objection to say, look, because these entities are registered as trusts, some are registered as communal property association. By their nature, especially the trust, it falls within the jurisdiction of the Master of the High Court. Therefore, in order for one to be able to investigate trust, the Trust Property Control Act of 1988, as amended, it has to be invoked.
Okay.
And the process to do so is to write to the master that there are some irregularities.
Okay.
And once the master is satisfied that there are indeed irregularities, then the master will then, in compliance with Section 16, subsection 2, order that indeed the investigation must be carried out.
Okay. What were the irregularities?
Well, there were a lot of irregularities. Just to name some of the irregularities that were occurring were in the area of finance. There were financial irregularities. There were no proper record keeping. There were no audited financial statement, annual, as it's supposed to be done for any entity or for any trust that is bona fide. It has to present its annual audited statement to the Office of the Master of the High Court.
Yes.
We found that these provisions, none of them were complied with. And over and above, the government also considered that we have failed these beneficiaries of these equity schemes by not making sure that a proper monitoring and overseeing if indeed what was committed by the farmers is being rolled out.
So yes, those you find a lot of things are not going okay. It basically means the farm workers are not in control as shareholders. Eventually, what happened with this case we're looking at, the eventual result of these irregularities that were happening, what happened to the farm workers?
The farm workers were dismissed. What is said is that there's a document that was purported to be a sale of the shares. Of the shares that government 2 years ago just bought it. I mean, just paid 800,000 to the farmer. The farmer 2 years later draft through a lawyer. And this document that I have seen or that we have uncovered during our investigation, it cut across all the 22 equity schemes, all the 22 farms.
Okay.
They used one document
Okay.
to buy the one document that the content is the same. The change is just the name,
The name of the
the
farm.
bank account,
Yeah.
where the money goes into, and the name of the farm. But the content is written in Afrikaans.
Yeah.
And they are making this illiterate, sorry to use the word, but this unschooled and unsuspecting farm workers to sign a document that in this document, you are signing to confirm that you have received your dividend. As usual, they've been receiving their dividend annually because they are shareholders in the scheme.
Yeah.
Of 20,000.
Okay.
But in actual fact, the document says we are buying your shares for 20,000.
For 20,000.
Government pays 800,000 to the farmer to acquire for farm workers a stake in the farm.
Yes.
The farmer, 2 years later, buys out
The farm worker.
the farm workers with a mere 20,000.
20,000.
He makes a clean profit of 780,000 in 20 years, without taking into consideration the other amount of money that has been put. There are 10 millions that were acquired, just apart from the 36 million, to build in one farm a pack house.
Yeah.
And when we were doing the investigation in 2017, we learned that a state-of-the-art pack house at that time would cost you in a region of around 20 to 30 million.
That could have been the additional funding that was sought on behalf of the farm workers.
Those are just some of the things that we have uncovered. And the sad part is that these farm workers, they lost their equity in the farm, 800,000, and they lost their employment, number 2. Number 3, they even lost the houses that they were built on the farms using their names. The dilemma for them was...
the biggest issue, the land.
The land as well.
Because the issue here is the land returning to blacks.
That's correct. You see now, when you look at this whole land redistribution issue and this whole issue of land claims, then you get to understand that the reason why some of these cases drags for this long, maybe we can place squarely the blame to government officials and the government department for not doing their job. I mean, I'm going to stress this point, Caesar, that here we are sitting with a business plan of Somvracht, Chago Trust, who have committed that over the years, from 2005, he will relinquish his majority shareholding stake to Badira Mpho. Then you ask yourself, how did government miss that part to ensure that they work with the Badira Mpho farm workers and beneficiaries to ensure that ultimately that was made in that business plan is achieved? It would have been a remarkable breakthrough to be reporting today to say in Northern Cape, in one of the grape farms, we have 46 farm workers who are owners.
Majority owned.
In the majority shareholding. The owners of Somvracht farm, who has gone to invest in many more farms in the Northern Cape. I'm talking with you today, and I have learned that the owner of Chago Trust, Dr. C.P. van Heerwe, has managed to make more acquisition from just one farm. We would have been telling a very good story of land redistribution.
Of
but
course.
46 farm workers today are owning not one farm, they have extended in owning 3 more grapevines farms in the Northern Cape.
Farm workers have been complaining, of course. They hire asked for your assistance because they were in trouble. I'm sure you investigated, you reported back to the government, a full report of this particular farm you reported, and you found the irregularities. What has been the response from the government?
Well, on the 20th of June, just to state it on record, on the 20th of June, after much back and forth with government department to pay for my cost, because I was appointed by the Master of the High Court on the 5th of September 2017.
Okay.
More than 3 years later, I complete my report, package it, and submit it to the Master of the High Court.
Okay.
With all the annexures, with the findings and the recommendations.
Okay.
Then I submit my invoice.
Okay, now to the Department of...
To the Department of Agriculture. Then the Department of...
One may argue that the Department of Justice, the Master of the High Court...
The Master then says, I submitted the invoice to the Department of Agriculture through the Master of the High Court.
Okay.
It was not directly submitted to the Department of Agriculture.
Okay, so...
It goes through the Master. Then the Master then submits the invoice.
So the Master had an agreement with the department about your payment that, look...
There was no service level agreement.
Okay.
And he states that the reason why there is no service level agreement, it's because the investigation was not a tender.
Okay.
The investigation was done in line with Section 16 of the Trust Property Control Act, subsection 1. And he goes further to say the reason again for why there was no service level agreement between myself and agriculture is because I was investigating the trusts which are registered with the Master's Office.
Okay.
And this investigation came as a request from the Department of Agriculture. It's there in the minutes.
Okay, yeah.
It's minuted, where on the 30th of June in 2017, the Department of Agriculture, I was part of those meetings.
Yeah.
And I'm sitting with the evidence. And the department also is aware because they are the one that tasked the Master to institute an investigation in line with the Trust Property Control Act.
Okay, okay.
By virtue of my appointment emanating from the office of the Master, it was in line with the legislation. He was simply exercising his legislative prerogative as a Master.
Okay.
And he further goes to say the Master does not need to put this on a tender. The Master appoint a fit and proper person, and that person report at the end of their investigation to the Master.
Okay.
And I complied with the provision of my appointments. Some of the guidelines that I'm also authorized to request or to procure services from, government department.
Okay.
And I did exactly that.
Okay.
Yeah.
No, that is clear. And then I was coming to the question of, then what has government been doing? You've done the investigation, you've made your findings, and then what has been the response of the Northern Cape government, the Department of Agriculture or the Premier?
The Department of Agriculture took the Master's report on review. It's cost order.
Wait. So now they're basically denying the findings?
Not the investigation report.
Okay.
The Master, upon my submission of the report, issued a cost order in line with Section 16, subsection 3 of the Trust Property Control Act.
Okay.
To order the department to pay for my cost of the investigation.
Okay.
He further says, if you are not satisfied In compliance with the law, you can seek remedy in the High Court or a relief in the High Court. You can take my cost order on review and request based on your prayers. Then the department in their prayers, they requested in the Northern Cape High Court in case number 61 of 2021.
Yeah.
They requested in their prayer for a court, for the Northern Cape High Court, to set aside the cost order issued by the master that the Department of Agriculture in the Northern Cape is responsible for my investigation cost, which came in amount of 3,726,000.
Yeah, yeah. So
then the case was heard in the Northern Cape High Court. On the 18th of August, 2023, the Northern Cape High Court ordered or affirmed when they issued their judgment, they upheld the master of the High Court, Mr. C.D. David's cost order, that indeed agriculture is liable for my cost.
So, well, I'm trying to understand now. You investigate, you make this finding,
and the recommendations.
And the recommendations would no, something is wrong. Government's money has been spent, but has not been used for the purpose. The farm workers have lost everything: their shareholding, their houses, most importantly, their land.
Yes.
And then the investigation you're doing, then the department you've done to uncover that, or rather to make sense of what happened on that particular farm or those farms, then they are saying we cannot pay you. So it basically means now they are stepping away from the problem. They are saying we're not going to assist the farm workers. That's what it means.
I've said many times, I've had many sleepless nights asking myself this question exactly, that could it be that the department's refusal to pay for my cost an excuse not to implement the findings and the recommendation that is contained in my report? Because the department has not yet implemented my findings and my recommendations, or even tested my report.
Or even just say, okay, you were not hired by us for, so if they had not, and then let's hire somebody of our own,
but the court,
that this problem is solved.
But the court has ruled on that.
Oh, yes.
That in fact, the master appointed Mr. Sebashe based on your request.
Yes, which is in the minutes.
In the minutes. Because when the master was going to court, he went to court to say, on the 30th of June, in this meeting that was organized by the Department of Agriculture, chaired by Mr. Jomobo Nukwani, who is the Director of Farmer Settlement Support.
Yeah.
Here is the minutes. The master said, I did not produce these minutes. I did not scribe these minutes. These minutes were scribed by the department.
Yes.
Here are the minutes, and here are the duties. Here is the duty was assigned to me as the master of the High Court in the Northern Cape Division to investigate. And for me, I did that in line with the Trust Property Control Act. I cannot investigate on my own. I must find a fit and proper person.
Yes.
The cost of that investigation must be borne by whoever that asked for the investigation. And who asked for the investigation is the Department of Agriculture, Northern Cape.
So they decide to go to court and they don't want to pay.
They went to court and the court ruled against them. And the cost, when they ruled against them, they slapped them with costs. The department, instead of paying for my cost, which is just roughly 3,726,000, they go into court. They spend taxpayers' money. My rough calculation to date, the Department of Justice and the Department of Agriculture combined, they have used more than 10 million taxpayers' money fighting to pay an invoice of just less than 4 million and refusing to restore the dignity of the farm workers who today are languishing in poverty, when government has made it possible for them to be shareholders in one of the most successful grapevine farms in the land. We're talking today, someone who was allocated 800,000 that enriched a farmer, a white farmer, is languishing in poverty, cannot afford to take their kids to school. They cannot even afford to apply for an RDP house because the RDP house that they have applied, it's there on the farm that they have been evicted.
Yeah, man, I'm smelling something here. Why would the department be so hell-bent on avoiding to pay you? Because it basically means they don't want to pay you, so they don't want to implement your recommendations. They are not accepting your findings. What is there for them to benefit? You see, now in my mind, it gets back to officials having interest in the matter, personal interest now in the matter. I may not be wrong to conclude that some of them benefited. That's why they are doing this. Why are they fighting this process that will ensure that the farm workers, as you said, the farm workers' dignity is returned?
And since we again on that score, it is the Department of Agriculture, Northern Cape, under the former MEC Norman Shushu, who initiated this consultative session that gave birth to me being appointed as an investigator into the equity scheme. Had it not been the department who organized a consultative session, which I was part of,
yes,
maybe today we would not be sitting with a report that is collecting dust in the office of the Master of the High Court. But I can tell you that the content of that report, without its annexures, was used as the part of the documents that went to court by the Master, and also the cost order of the Master. It goes to say, I'm in possession of the full report which can be collected or can be attained at my office at your request. It's available. But for the purpose of this cost order that I'm issuing against the Department of Agriculture, I'm annexing, I'm putting a summary of his report. I'm saying to you that today, the MEC Mase, the Honorable Mase Manopolo of Agriculture, Northern Cape, even in her court papers, when she went to court to ask the court to set aside the Master of the High Court as cost order, she's aware of the summary of my report.
Yeah, exactly. And I've been wondering why she would. I think there's a farm worker here. I spoke to Mandilake, Lincoln,
Mpemba, yes.
Okay, apparently he went to the department's Facebook page and complained about the department not assisting them, just ignoring, looking away from this matter. And then he was, the MEC threatened him with a lawsuit just for complaining about what we're talking about now. I mean, it's kind of, I don't know, it does not sit well.
It's a David and Goliath type of a situation.
It does not sit well. Why would she go at length to defend a complaint, to go to try to gag a poor farm worker who's saying, look, here we've lost everything?
Hence, I've already indicated, it's a David and a Goliath type of a situation. The Goliath being the government's department with its massive financial resources. When you look at that content, the Department of Agriculture, Northern Cape, wanted to take a farm worker whose mother is deceased and was a beneficiary at Somvracht Farm and was a shareholder in Badira Moro Trust,
Yes.
which was co-owning 45% of the shares with Chago Trust in the Somvracht Farm. Mandileka is a farm worker as a result of the poverty that government, the Northern Cape Department, has afflicted on his life.
Yes.
His mother owns the shares, which are valued at 800,000,
Yes.
paid to the farmer. His mother, 2 years later, is given a letter that she must sell. With the case, she refused to accept that 20,000. She refused to sign the document.
Oh, she refused.
She refused.
Okay. At
But
least, yeah.
he is a victim. And
Yeah.
instead of the department protecting this victim who's been victimized by the department's lack of oversight, checks and balances that they have supposed to have been put in place to ensure that that majority shareholding stake by the Badira Moro, which is the trust that is representing the farm workers, happen. Mandileka would not be just only exchanging his labor, will also be receiving dividends annually
Exactly.
in the farm.
But now, obviously, the Northern Cape Department of Agriculture has failed dismally to help these workers.
They have failed dismally to help the workers, and they are so proud because they are using the courts. They went into the Northern Cape High Court to petition to set aside the cost order of the master of the High Court. They failed. On the 18th of August, they were slapped with the cost order.
Yeah.
And they petitioned for an appeal.
Yes.
The court pronounced in the court papers, in their judgment, that there is no reasonable prospects of appeal and even grounds that you have canvassed in law to warrant the audience of the Supreme Court of Appeal.
Yes.
They ignore that part in the judgment. They petition for the Supreme Court of an appeal.
Yeah.
But I think they were doing so just to ensure that they have that term sub judice. Because they have always benefited on the word sub judice. When you inquire about the matter, they will hide behind the word, this matter is before court, therefore we are not at liberty to comment on it. That is why they petitioned the SCA. Then they come back, they petitioned to the SCA on the 20th of April after the judgment of February that the Northern Cape dismissed their appeal with the remarks that this appeal does not even have prospects to warrant the audience of the Supreme Court of Appeal.
Yes.
They petition an appeal.
Okay, and then what?
A month later, they withdraw the petition, and they come back to give us reasons that the reason why we have withdrawn our appeal at the Supreme Court of Appeal is because we did not file, or rather we did not file correctly certain annexures or certain documents.
Okay.
The Supreme Court of Appeal, I'm not a lawyer, Sizwe.
Yeah.
In terms of the court, the rules of the court, if you don't appeal after a month, this was in February.
Yes.
When the Northern Cape High Court dismissed their appeal.
Yes.
If you don't appeal
within a month
after your matter has been dismissed by the High Court to the SCA,
you
lose that window period.
Okay, so then
The matter then becomes where we say this is now prescribed. You can no longer go to court.
It has expired.
It expired. We are sitting 9 months later, 10 months later, because we are in December.
Yeah.
The judgment of the Northen Cape High Court came in in February this year.
Yes.
9 months later, the department refused to pay my invoice.
Okay.
The department refused to implement the findings of my report. Some of the findings of my report, CISO, is just to say, nullify the 20,000 share certificate that was purported to have been dividends.
Yeah.
Or rather, that was used to purport to be paying dividends when in actual fact it was a sale agreement. Let me just highlight one thing.
So I also want to clarify this for the listeners. So this farmer, according to your finding or the finding of your investigation, tells the farm workers to come and sign a document to receive their dividends as usual of 20,000 rands. But in actual fact, what is written in the document in legal jargon, in Afrikaans, is that you are selling your shares back to the farmer for 20,000 rand.
Can I tell you how it happens? I have a statement that was deposed by those farm workers who were robbed of their 800,000 share.
Yeah.
The money was paid in December.
Yes.
And at that time, they are home during the holidays because they are permanent workers, employees. They have taken their December leave.
Okay.
Money is paid when they are home. They receive money from their different areas where they stay. The farmer takes out his bakkie with the farm manager to drive around the areas where these farm workers are staying. Yeah. Some are staying more than 300 kilometers away.
Okay.
But the manager reached them.
Okay.
You received the money already in your account because this farmer is paying your salary. The 20,000, you received it. When the manager comes to you at home with the paper, he says, we are here for you to sign that you have received
the payment.
That 20,000.
Oh.
And because these farmers, this farm worker, the farmer used a document that was drafted in Afrikaans. Majority of them can speak Afrikaans, but they can't read.
They can't read, yeah. Even worse, if it's legal jargon, yes. It's a legal document, there is a different Afrikaans again, yes. Which needs a learned person.
Can you see how this was scripted? This unscrupulous character of this farmer, which I don't know why it does not rattle the MEC or the officials of the Northern Cape Agriculture when they look at these glaring documents in front of them to say, no, hang on. Justice needs to be seen done here. We cannot, 30 years post-democracy, still have our people who we have promulgated laws in parliament to protect and advance their socio-economic condition, still trapped in poverty, even after we have purported to have advanced a cause for a better life for them through the equity scheme. Yet we fail to make sure that this equity scheme project is implemented in such a way that it will change their course of their lives. Why MEC Manopole? Why Mr. Joe Mobunukwani? Why the acting head of Department of Agriculture, Advocate T. Binase? And why Mr. Mashunye? Why Mr. Mwoketsi? These are some of the top brass of the Department of Agriculture in the Northern Cape are not asking themselves this question. What if we were to implement the report of Mr. Sebashe? because the same findings and the recommendation contained in the report of Mr. Sebashe is exactly the same findings that the Department of Agriculture issued in 2018 in one of their meetings.
The
same findings that are contained in my report.
So in other words, they use your report in that meeting.
They used my summary.
Okay.
Because I would write a summary report to the master before I compiled.
Okay. Yeah.
We seems to agree that there was fraudulent in the manner in which the sale of the share by the farmer was acquired from the farm workers.
Yeah.
It was fraudulent. The department seems to share that sentiment. We seem to agree that a criminal case must be open against the farmer.
Yes.
For fraud.
Yes.
We seem to agree that the so-called share certificate, which by the way says that there was no sale agreement, because when I'm buying a share, because it's a financial transaction, there must be a proposal.
First. There are processes to be followed.
Yes.
Not somebody.
That due process was not followed.
Not somebody going with a bag.
They were just ambushed at home, and they thought they were signing as a confirmation that indeed the 20,000 rand that had already been in the account has been paid.
But who in his right mind would sell shares worth 800,000 rand for 20,000?
And why government officials and the MEC is not asking themselves that question? Why are we allowing taxpayers' money to be wasted like this? Government is the one that has been robbed, not the farm workers. The taxpayers' money were used to pay for the shares, and the same taxpayers' money were stolen.
It's you and I.
By
it's
the
you
farm.
and I who has been robbed. At the end of the day, we work hard, we pay our taxes, and if we default, SARS is on us. And then they have the gall to take our money, use it, and never follow up.
And they have the audacity to even go to court to spend more money defending this grand theft by the farmer.
Exactly.
Government is exactly going to court to say, we want to shield the farmer who has stolen from government.
This is sad. This is sad. So, what has happened now? They went to the SCA, they petitioned the SCA. Has there been an outcome?
That petition was withdrawn.
Withdrawn.
As I'm talking to you now, there is no case that is before court between agriculture and the master of the High Court. What is stand is that High Court judgment that the master of the High Court was correct to order that the Department of Agriculture is liable for my investigation cost of 3,726,000.
Okay.
Therefore, they must pay me because the court has affirmed the master of the High Court's cost order.
Okay.
And the department's petition at the Northen Cape High Court was dismissed with cost.
So now, obviously, they are refusing to pay you.
Yes.
What steps are you taking? Because you cannot be phoning them, writing to them every now and then. They simply refusing to pay you.
I've received a letter on the 22nd of October. I don't know whether am I at liberty to read out that letter.
Fine. Read it.
I've received the letter from the 18 HOD.
Okay.
The
MEC is still the same.
The MEC is Mase Manopole.
Okay.
Who was head in one of the election campaigns in Mutibi Stad.
Yeah.
When the farmers went to him.
Yeah.
To ask, what are you doing about our issue?
Yes.
And she was heard on a voice record saying that the master appointed himself to be the chief procurement officer of Agriculture. And it's very sad when you have MEC who is supposed to be conducting themselves in line with the requirements of the law, behaving or lambasting another government official. The office of the Master of the High Court is strategic in the sense that it's the one that is actually protected these farm workers by making sure that it invokes Section 16, subsection 2 to conduct an investigation. Had it not been that we have institutions like that, even today the Department of Agriculture would not have went on a course to reverse this tragedy that has happened to these farm workers. The letter that I received from the acting HOD, it says, inquiries, Mr. S. Silewu, who's the director in the Legal Services Department. Your reference, date 22 October 2024, Mr. Mpho Sebashe, Manager Morwapeta Trading, Pty Ltd. My email address, dear Mr. Sebashe, request for an appointment, because I've been requesting for an appointment with the HOD. Then now he responds to my letter. It has been brought to my attention that indeed you are interested party to the matter, DIAL, which I think it's abbreviated Department of Agriculture, Environmental, Rural and Land Reforms, versus the Master of the High Court.
Yes.
The same is also confirmed by the court papers and the related judgment. In this respect, the parties to the matter have engaged their respective attorneys of records, and as per advisement, the matter is sub judice. And as such, engaging on it without involving our attorneys of record is ill-conceived and inappropriate. We are aware and appreciate that despite you not being party to the proceedings, you remain an interested or affected person in the matter. We therefore implore you that we allow the legal process to proceed to its finality, and only then a way forward will be determined. We have, however, indicated to our attorneys of records that we seek a speedy resolution to this matter. For your ease of communication, we hereby provide you with the details of our attorneys of records. Mr. P. Zilwa, Office of the State Attorney, Kimberley, Northen Cape, her phone number. We trust that upon the conclusion of the matter, this office will engage with you further. We thank you for your indulgence and your anticipated response. Yours respectively, Advocate Tulani Binase, Acting Head of Department. As I was saying, the department would like to use the word sub judice. You will take note that this letter was written on the 22nd of October this year. Their withdrawal at the SCA was on the 24th of April 2024, which means that withdrawal, it signals the end.
Exactly, there's no process.
There is no court proceedings or any outstanding matter at the High Court or at the Supreme Court of Appeal.
No, I think they tend to abuse the word sub judice, which basically means a matter is under judicial consideration. In simple terms, it means the matter is in court. What is in court in this matter?
There is no matter that is before court. What agriculture must do, they must do the honorable thing to do. They must pay, they must comply with the court order, first and foremost. Because non-compliance of the court order, it basically means that the department is violating our court judgments. They are in contempt.
But another question I would ask is, okay, they owe you, obviously, for the investigation. But for the sake of the farm workers, can you allow them to use your report to implement your recommendations to help the farm workers even before they have paid you?
My report is with the master. It remains a property of the master.
Okay.
It has been used by the DPCI, the Directorate of Private. It's the Hawks.
Crimes investigations.
Yes.
Yeah, the
Yes.
Hawks. Yeah. Also, the Hawks are
the
are looking
Hawks
into
are
the
in
matter.
possession of my
Okay.
report.
Okay.
I did inquire and I was provided a response in this fashion that where a crime has been committed, it's not wrong to utilize that report, even though it has not yet been paid for. Because that report's by another agency of the state.
Yes.
It uses it to ensure that that crime, there are recourse
Yeah.
for that crime.
Yeah, because I was asking that question is your report. There's no dispute.
The DPCI is in possession of my report, and I was made aware that the human rights lawyers are busy petitioning in the court.
Yeah.
They are applying for access of information.
Yes.
On this issue, trying to assist the farm workers who has lost their shares.
Yeah.
That is what I have been informed quite recently.
Okay. But what has been the role of the National Department, if any, on this matter?
None of whatsoever. What the National Department will say is that we are National Department. This matter is with the department, is the provincial department. Then you have knocked onto the wrong door. Therefore, they will direct you to the right door. And when you get there, because there's an issue of policy.
Yeah.
This policy comes from National Department. The implementing agency is the provincial department. Yeah, that is what creates a whole lot of confusion as to why the policy initiator is not also making sure that the implementing agent take responsibility. Correct this wrong, because this wrong costed governments, taxpayers' money, millions and millions of rents.
Yeah.
That in my view, and in also the master of the High Court's cost order, he's saying there was a wasteful expenditure.
Yeah. But also, I mean, this is the kind of action by the department which defeats the whole purpose of land reform legislation. You know, we still have a long way to go in order to ensure that land is redistributed equally amongst South Africans, and those who were dispossessed unfairly reclaim what they used to own. We still have a long way to go. And then you find a whole government department playing a very long game instead of solving a simple matter.
Yeah, indeed. Indeed, if the Northen Cape Provincial Department, my plea is for the Premier to have a look at this matter. And my wish is that wherever they sit in their corner, can sense of Ubuntu touches them, and whatever that is happening to be reversed, because I see arrogance. That's what I see.
Yeah, exactly.
I see a blatant arrogance, and I see a total disregard of our laws, a total disregard of our court orders. I see individuals who say that we are untouchable. Perhaps it's because of the corrupt activities that has happened. Maybe it has linked some of the officials, and they are protecting one another by making sure that they use state attorneys to fight cases that should not even be brought to court. Government has a forum that is called Intergovernmental Relation Framework, where they can resolve their dispute. But here you see an arm of the state, an organ of the state, the Master of the High Court, and another department in the same province, the Department of Agriculture. Two organs of state using state resources, taking each other to court to delay the implementation of the findings of a report that ruled that we must nullify the sale of the share. We must restore the farm workers' shares, and we must make sure that they regain their labor, their position of where they were prior to 2007, when they were evicted from the farm and they were dismissed from their full-time employment. If they can just implement only those two, we will see justice prevail. Dignity for those farm workers will ultimately prevail.
Yeah, because they've lost everything. Not only the shares, now their jobs. The bigger issue is the land. But it is still surprising, why would a government official be hell-bent to fight this? Basically fighting against a farm worker, receiving what is due to him and improving the life of the farm workers, not even these ones, but the generations to come, to change the economic system of the country. Basically, that's what this matter is about. It's about transferring the economy to people who actually were poor, who didn't have access to such kind of economy. And that is generational wealth that they have been fiddling with. They've destroyed the future of the farm workers and their great-grandchildren.
Absolutely. Another failed triple BEE program, here in case in the equity scheme in the farming sector. We have failed to transfer wealth from one generation to another.
Yeah, this is sad, but this may perhaps be our conclusion here, because we sitting alone. Maybe the department will be invited to the People's Eye podcast to explain itself. Well, we have contacted them before for the online publication, but the response has always been, no, this is not our matter, it's a national department matter, pillar to post. National department, I think their last response was, yeah, we're looking into the matter or something like that. That's where we are. But for the record, Department of Agriculture, Northern Cape, you will be invited to be given an hour, like we've given you, Mr. Sebashe, to explain yourself. Bring your documents, compare them with your documents, and let's see where the matter takes us. Where we're sitting, I don't think the matter is sub judice, under judicial consideration, because it's not before any court at this point. But thanks very much for honoring our invitation to take part in this podcast.
Thank you, Sizwe, and to the People's Eye. I wish you all the best. This is a very these are opportunities that some of us we need in order to ensure that we air our frustration out there. And we hope that the powers that be will heed the call and ensure that the findings of my report are implemented and my invoice is ultimately paid. Thank you, Sizwe, and thank you to your crew.
That's all.